Hey y'all, Jeff Nowak here, NOLA.com's digital sports producer. Just here to bring y'all a quick Monday live chat to go over some quick takeaways from the Saints' victory over the Bears in the wildcard round of the playoffs yesterday at the Superdome. Saints won 21-9. I had to think about it for a second because it was so close to being 28-3, and they just couldn't quite get it there. But I have with me today our two Saints beat writers, Amy Just and Luke Johnson. How y'all doing?
Doing great, Jeff. How are you?
Great.
Can't complain. It's freezing cold, but at least I'm inside. I'd, as always, like to thank our sponsor, Hancock Whitney, because they appreciate it when I shout them out here, and they get mad when I don't. So, again, thanks to our sponsor. And we can just dive right in here. We just wanted to vamp for a couple seconds to make sure people got on the feed. And I just wanted to throw to you guys and kind of get your biggest takeaways today, Monday, after the game. What are you guys kind of thinking about this morning in regard to the Saints? And we can go to Luke first.
Well, I think the temptation is to think about Alvin Kamara, Michael Thomas, Drew Brees all sharing the field again for the first time since like mid-November. Deontay Harris coming back for the first time in 6 weeks and playing a big game. But I'm going to go with the Saints defense just continuing to play this unreal, like consistent high level. And I wrote a story right before the game started about how the Saints defense is a defense that can take them to the championship game, and I think they proved that again this weekend. Bears, I think before their last drive started, meaningless drive in the last 2 minutes, they weren't going to come back and win that game. I think they had 140 net offensive yards in their first 9 possessions. That's insane. Say what you want about the Bears offense, but in the last 6 weeks of the season, they were playing really well. Mitchell Trubisky was playing pretty well. David Montgomery is one of the best running backs in the NFL the last half of the season, and the Saints just completely shut him down. So I think that's my biggest takeaway, and they're going to need that unit to play well again for these next couple of weeks because in order to get back past Tampa Bay, you're going to have to not let them score 40 points on you like they've been doing to a lot of people. And no matter if you win that game, no matter what happens between Green Bay and Los Angeles, I think points are going to be at a premium in the NFC Championship game. So that unit has to continue playing well, and I think it was a good sign to see him do it in the playoffs.
Sounds good. How about you?
I agree. That was going to be my answer, but I'll pivot now.
You're welcome. That's why I go first.
Fine.
We should have flipped a coin.
It is what it is. I mean, there are a lot of takeaways from that game, though, right? So one of the things that stood out to me was obviously Alvin. He comes in, he doesn't practice, and he still goes for almost 100 yards. I think there's something to be said about his intelligence as a player and to not let that be a distraction for him. I do think that being in constant communication with Drew and Sean and the rest of the team and participating in virtual practice. So I'm still trying to visualize that, practicing at home while you're watching practice on like video camera and listening to Sean, but the Zoom meetings as well. So I think they did a really good job of keeping him as involved as possible when he couldn't be with the team, and I think that only helped him. So if anybody could do that, it would be Alvin, I think.
Now I'm envisioning Alvin doing like Tybo, like we got the live stream practices and Alvin's just like in the backfield, like doing like this and this and his
balancing on a medicine ball at the same time.
Yeah.
One of the things he said after the game that I thought, it didn't even really occur to me until he said it, was that he basically had a bye week. He kind of had a first-round bye on his own. And I think, of all the people who you might want to get some rest heading into the playoffs, he's probably the guy, other than maybe Breeze. But Breeze obviously had 4 weeks out with that injury, so the rest for him wasn't probably as significant. Obviously, Michael Thomas, Deontay Harris also out. But I'm curious, so they came out of this game pretty healthy. I know Patrick Robinson and Tavius Murray got banged up. But to me, it seems like this is a team that's as healthy as they could possibly hope to be. What would you guys say on that?
I mean, the last time I said those words, their entire running back room went out of the game with COVID. So I don't know. This is one of those seasons where I don't think you can bank on any of those sorts of things. It's just like the whole script can change in the span of like an hour. You just get one positive test back and the whole thing just goes kaboom. So yeah, I think they're pretty healthy, but I'm not going to say that until until like Friday, Saturday maybe.
Yeah, I'll focus on physical health because as we know, anything can happen with COVID. But I do think that there's nothing but benefits to having your full complement, almost your full complement. Sorry, Trey Hendrickson and Traquan Smith for forgetting about you for a second. Like even if guys go out with COVID, like it's better to have them healthy, right? Like I know that's kind of a weird way to think about it, but having them available is good. That's the understatement of the year. So, I mean, Emmanuel Sanders said it best last week, right? You know, when you have everybody, this team can do like amazing things. And we've only seen that for 10 quarters until yesterday.
Right.
So, which is bizarre. Like they went 12-4 and Drew and Alvin and Mike were only on the field for 10 quarters together all season long. Like it's hard to wrap my mind around that. I think a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, the story of the season has really been the Saints finding ways to win without most of their roster. I mean, they did it in week 4 without both starting cornerbacks. You know, they did it in week 17 without their entire running back room. But it's like the question now is what can this team do with all of their players? And they seemed to struggle in the first half of last week. I know Sean Payton wouldn't attribute it to rust until he went over the film. Did you guys see some rust there with the guys coming back?
I mean, I think so, and
yeah,
I'll let you go, Amy, since I keep making your points.
No, go ahead. It's fine.
I think they showed right away there was like you could see they wanted to incorporate those guys and get them back in quickly. The first drive, basically every play went through Kamara, Thomas, Deontay Harris. And then the second drive was kind of a similar thing. They got in the end zone. Everything looked good. But from that point on, they started. Everything was made a little bit harder. I think the timing wasn't there, and I think that's why you saw some of the pass rush getting to Drew. They were having some success on these drives. They just weren't finishing them off, and I think that is just really a result of needing to get back on the same page with these guys, and these guys needing to be around each other, and there's value in that, 100%. And I think they got it figured out in the second half, and they played a much better brand of offensive football. And I think we're going to see that kind of continue as this playoff stretch carries on. I just don't think that I don't think they can afford to play another half of football offensively like they did against Chicago in the first half.
Yep.
Yeah, and so one note from that game that I thought was interesting, the 10 points in the first half, that was the lowest first half point total of a playoff game since Super Bowl 53 with the Rams and the Patriots. There was 3 points scored in the first half of that game. I feel like I need to tell everyone that because no Saints fans watched it. That's the game they boycotted with the crazy second line and all that good stuff. But
remember when that was a thing?
Yeah, it's like a different lifetime. But we do have one question in the chat that is well timed because I think this is a good thing to kind of get into today. Amy, you just wrote up probably the biggest news of the morning. It's Saints went and signed Blair Walsh to the practice squad. You know, what kind of is your kind of takeaway on what you're seeing there?
Yeah, so he tried out on the 1st of January. Speaking about Blair Walsh, so the Saints had him in their thoughts and getting him involved in tryouts and seeing if they could even bring him aboard since he hasn't, attempted a kick in a game since 2017. So I think bringing another kicker in is for more than one reason. It may be a little of not the best timing after Will misses a field goal, 50-yarder, and then they don't try him from around that same spot yesterday. But also, okay, let's see what happened last week with the running backs. If that were to happen with the specialists, it's not like you've got a premium of available people around to actually be a kicker or a punter or a long snapper. Like those, they're specialists for a reason. You don't have many of them. So you can't just sign someone off the street these days. They have to go through the COVID protocols. So in case of emergency, it's better to have somebody available that you can pull up from the practice squad than throw some random person out there to kick or punt. So it doesn't help that Will Lutz isn't playing his best football right now. But I think both things are applicable here.
Don't forget that Taysom Hill kicked 2 47-yard field goals in high school. So
yeah, but that was like a million years ago.
He's not that old. Come on, I'm older than Taysom Hill. It's not fair.
Yeah, what are you, like 50?
But you're also not playing pro football.
Not yet.
Taysom, I think, give him a chance. He probably stretches range out to about 55. Or Alvin Kamara. I mean, come on.
I mean, it would be fun.
Blair Walsh or Alvin Kamara. That's all I got.
Oh, Alvin, 100%. Just because it would be more fun. But
it would be more fun. No, I mean,
throwing them in kicking drills a week before a game is not a good idea for anyone, even though it would be fun.
I mean, Amy's spot on. And look, we saw this just play out this weekend where the whole reason the Washington football team signed Taylor Heineke was because they saw what happened with the Denver Broncos against the Saints, where their whole quarterback room got wiped out by COVID before the game, much like the Saints running back room did a few weeks ago. And they were forced to play with a practice squad wide receiver at quarterback. And granted, it'd be a whole lot different if you're talking about, having to play with Taysom Hill at kicker in an NFL game compared to having to play with Will Lutz at quarterback. It's a completely different thing. But if you're in a tight playoff game and you've got to rely on somebody who you are just like absolutely unsure what the end result is going to be, it's like a really, really bad feeling to be in, because those games are typically not blowouts. So regardless of why this decision was made, I think it's absolutely a smart decision to just have it in case, because you could be totally left in the cold if not.
And so Blair Walsh, and he's kind of an interesting character. He's been out of the league for a couple seasons, I believe. And kind of, this isn't fair to him, but my lasting image of Blair Walsh is
probably a lot of people's lasting image. I know
when he shanked that kick for the Vikings in the playoffs against the Seahawks.
22 yards out.
Yeah. And
27, I think. But yeah, still bad.
Yeah. It was and if you recall, that was Teddy Bridgewater at quarterback. So there's kind of a looping connection there. That was that wasn't the last game he played before he come to the Saints, or was it? He had another season, I think. Anyway, but so you touched on this a little bit, and I think this is an important point because he tried out last week. He's already been in the protocol, so he theoretically, if the Saints needed him this week, Blair Walsh would be available. Correct? I
think so. I'm not 100% sure on that, but it's good that he's already tried out, because he had to go through the protocol before you can even do that. You can have like Zoom meetings, but in order for like an in-person tryout, you have to clear protocols. So I think so, but I'm not 100%.
He would be available because, it's a 5-day turnaround. So like
it's true. It is Monday. I'm so bad at remembering what day of the week it is.
Yeah. If they had to use him, they'd be able to use him this week.
Yeah, and I think that's something that is important to note, because otherwise it would kind of seem like, okay, why are you even bringing this guy in at all? But I think we should touch on Will Lutz a little bit. Obviously, he's not had he's been a rock solid kicker basically his entire career since they signed him after being cut because Justin Tucker is the best kicker in the NFL, and that's the guy he was trying to beat out of Georgia Southern. And since you go back to that
Georgia State, you're gonna make some people angry.
Georgia State.
Yeah, come on now.
It's in the state of Georgia. Anyway.
Yeah.
So since going back to that slip against the Falcons, which there's never been any indication that that's affected him, but if you kind of go back to that point, he's missed 4 of his last 7 kicks. he's attempted 2 outside of 50 yards. Both have been misses. He missed 1 extra point. He missed 1 extra point. And so you kind of look at a guy who, whether he's healthy or not, there's something going on there that's affecting the Saints offense because it's going to affect your decision making. First drive of the game, they punted from the 38-yard line. That's a spot, especially at the Superdome, that you would expect to see Lutz get a chance at a 56-yarder, 57-yarder. That was not the case. They punted early in that game. And so what do you do there if you get into a situation, a close game, where you don't have trust in your kicker? That's got to have an effect on the offense in some capacity, whether it affects your third down play calling, you're going for it on fourth down more often. I mean, that's going to be something looming for the Saints to have to deal with as they go forward. I know, Amy, you talked to Darren Rizzi last week. What were his kind of indications of what that is?
Yeah, it sounded like he's still optimistic with Will, though the stats don't lie. Like something's off. I don't know what it is. I don't know if he tried to overcompensate for slipping against Atlanta, because Darren said that doesn't happen very often. I don't know what's going on with him, but there's something going on there. I don't know if it's mental, if it's a little physical thing, but even the slightest change for kickers and punters can throw everything off. And regardless of what that is, you're seeing the result of that right now, I think.
Do you think it could have been SpongeBob related? He kept popping up inside the goalpost last week.
That was all augmented reality. That wasn't actually at the Superdome. I know. Disappointing, right? No real slime.
It would have been so much better if they just had like the end zones coated in slime. And we say that it would have been better until people would have been there like pulling muscles, like slipping around in the slime. I think that the Will Lutz thing is like a really interesting scenario because he was such a weapon for them. I mean, the guy's drilled like several game-winning kicks in his career, and this is just not the time of year you want to just like have a little bit of a crisis of confidence, whether it's Will Lutz and himself or Sean Payton and Will Lutz. It doesn't really matter. And I think you have seen it play out a little bit over these last couple of weeks. They have been a little bit more aggressive on fourth down, and they did punt from like 37 or 38 or whatever it was on their opening drive. It's a tricky spot to be in because it's absolutely a huge weapon when he's going good, and he has been going good for his entire career. I don't know. It's not a great spot to be in right now. But I do think that like he's been so good over the course of his career that I don't think it's like, I saw some people like get rid of him. It's like you let him figure it out. You want him to figure it out fast, and but I don't think he can cut bait on Will Lutz.
All right, so let's talk about something more optimistic here than 50-yard field goals that get pulled to the left. We have coming up another matchup, a third of the season between Drew Brees, Tom Brady, Bucs, Saints, divisional round. I want to say it's 6:40 p.m. on Sunday. Got the late start, but it's a little early than a typical late start. What are you guys looking at in that matchup? There's going to be a repeated cliche that it's hard to beat one team 3 times in a season. I'm not sure there's any data that backs that up, but you're going to hear it either way. What do y'all think about that?
Yeah, I'm in the middle of doing some research on that, so stay tuned. But even before I crunch the numbers, like, I think it's harder to beat a team that's beat you twice. That's just my take on it.
Yeah,
usually if a team beats you twice, they're usually better than you. So I don't know. I don't really subscribe to the theory. I don't think anybody else does either. But we'll entertain it anyways this week.
Yeah, it's just kind of one of those talking points that's easy to throw out there. In recent history, the one I remember, 2017, Saints beat the Panthers twice in the regular season, beat them again in the playoffs. Honestly, more so than the 2 matchups. I don't know why that second matchup is somehow a reason that game becomes more difficult. I think it's when you beat a team the way the Saints did in Week 9 and you just embarrass them at home. you talk about bulletin board material, kind of coming into a game. I don't know if you need that for a playoff matchup, but I think getting embarrassed at home is all the incentive you need to come out and try to make a statement. I don't think you're going to see the same type of Bucs performance that you saw in that game. But what do y'all think? Do you think this is going to be a barn burner?
Well, look, I think the thing to take away from those first two games are the Buccaneers turned the ball over like I think 7 times, maybe 8 times combined in those two games. And I think the reason for that, and it's not just the Saints that this has happened against, it's that Buccaneers offense has not been the same when they get a lot of pressure in their face. And the Saints are one of the NFL's best teams at creating pressure with just their front four. And I think that's why Tampa struggled with the Saints. They were making Tom Brady's life miserable, and they were making him throw early, and they were making him throw off target, and they were capitalizing on those mistakes. So I don't think that's going to change. Tampa did a really good job against Washington's front four this past week, keeping those guys in check, giving Tom Brady a clean pocket, and Tom Brady picked them apart. But they're going to have to do that again this week for the Bucs to have a chance against the Saints, I think. And personally, I don't think this is going to be a barn burner type of game. I think, if anything, this will probably be closer to what the Washington and Tampa game was last week. I think it'll be somewhere in the 30 to 27 range, which I guess you could call that a barn burner, but not in the same way that the Browns and Steelers game was last night.
I also think it's important to note that one of the Bucs' best offensive linemen fractured his ankle last week. Alex Kappa, their starting right guard. That's tough. That's a big loss in the playoffs. And I think the Saints are going to do their best to take advantage of that situation.
Yeah, the other guy who I don't know what his status is going to be, but he was not active this week was Ronald Jones. He's been hurt going the latter half of the season. I think he was active last week and he didn't really play. So odds are the Saints are going to end up seeing a heavy dose of Leonard Fournette, who gets to play his second game in the Superdome this season after signing with the Bucs. But even on top of that, you have so many guys with the Bucs that have just been acclimated to the team this season or midseason. You have obviously Antonio Brown, who made his first start for the Bucs in that game in Week 9 and has 8 games under his belt to kind of get into that offense. So I think there's a chance you see a much more cohesive offensive group. And but if the Saints get after Tom Brady the way they did in that game, David Onyemata, like I said last week, just kind of lived in his kitchen that entire game. I think that you'll end up seeing a similar performance. The Bucs need to block, as you pointed out, and they are going to be undermanned to some extent.
Yeah, and the Saints might get Trey Hendrickson back this week too, and Trey's had 2 huge games against Tampa this year. So, I think it's just a bad matchup for Tampa Bay. I think it's still going to be a competitive game. I think I wouldn't be surprised if the Bucs won. But I think just this team for them is just a bad matchup, and I think that's why the whole 3 games thing is overrated. It's like, they have to face a team they don't match up very well against for the 3rd time.
Yeah, I'll never forget that there's a series in the last time out where Trey Hendrickson had 3 sacks on Tom Brady in a row. The first one was a strip sack, and it was negated due to penalty, and then he came back and sacked him twice more in a row. I've never seen a series that dominant by one single guy. And if the Saints get Trey back this week, I don't know. I don't think it's going to be very good for Tom Brady, but we'll see.
In case
you have to point out that
there's a Huck. He was right there over my shoulder.
He was in the background a little bit earlier too.
He's comfortable. I wish I was in pajamas right now, to be fair. But okay, I think that's where we'll wrap it up. Again, my name is Jeff Nowak, NOLA.com's digital sports producer. I'm here with Saints beat writers Luke Johnson and Amy Just. You can follow them on Twitter @bylukejohnson and @Amy_Just. Can't forget that underscore. I have one of those myself. so I understand it. Thanks to everyone for watching, for dropping in comments. Thanks to our sponsor, Hancock Whitney, for helping us bring it to y'all. And thanks, y'all, for joining. All right. Yet again, I forgot to have the
Way to go,
video
Jeff.
queued up. I need
Yeah.
to put like a
Thought we
post-it
were
note
gonna have
on
like a clean exit here.
Well, it's going. You ready? Boom.